svetilja mlada svoje platno veze na izvoru moga sna. Pod njom kaplju zvijezde u žilama noći, okićena svilom blagoslov milosti. Hej Bosno, studen vodo, da li tužiš u samoći? Vodi me njenoj gori, pa da i ja sklopim oči. Ja planine nemam, da svoje snove svijem. Duša kad zaboli, da se u njih krijem. Povrh bistre vode noćima jasnila, njeno lice bijelo uvječno se sliva. Pod njom kaplju zvijezde u žilama noći, okićena svilom blagoslov milosti. Hej Bosno, studen vodo, da li tužiš u samoći? Vodi me njenoj gori, pa da i ja sklopim oči. Ja planine nemam, da svoje snove svijem. Duša kad zaboli, da se u njih krijem. Povrh bistre vode noćima jasnila, njeno lice bijelo uvječno se sliva.
Good evening from Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. A small country, as we here like to say, in the very heart of Europe. On this day 26 years ago, in a small town called Srebrenica, around 120 kilometers from where we sit today, the horror of forcible taking of thousands of human lives has begun. From 11th to 16th July in 1995, over 8,000 people were killed in the most monstrous ways. Bosnian Muslims, mostly men and boys, were killed for having these identities: Bosnian, Muslim, men and boys. For genocide and war crimes in Srebrenica, the war political and military leadership of Republika Srpska and the so-called Army of Republika Srpska were sentenced to over 700 years in prison in domestic and international court rulings. On this day, 26 years later, in this very same heart of Europe, we still fight against genocide denial and victim dehumanization. Not all people killed in the genocide were found. Some family members are still collecting pieces of their loved ones because their bones are being found in several mass graves. Tearing apart human bodies, lives, futures, the intention to erase one nation from one space is without doubt, for a healthy mind, a genocide. Today we will be speaking about people of Srebrenica, about their humanity. One of these people was a young man, Esmir murdered in July 1995. Author Nick Teunissen wrote the book which we will be presenting today, Looking for Esmir. Nick, I invite you to greet all the people who are here with us today.
Thank you, Hannah. Dobro večer. Thank you so much for attending our emission, our live stream. Not only here in Sarajevo, but also all around the globe, because it's being emissioned in so many countries. Dayton, Ohio, Berlin, Amsterdam, and I can go on and on. So the amount of attention we're getting is overwhelming. We're feeling very humble. So thank you for watching and thank you for being here live in the audience.
Nick, please tell us about the story of the photograph of Esmir, which is the last memory, the last moment of life captured before it was stolen by death.
It's a very personal story, since my family and friends are also from Bosnia, from Sarajevo, Srebrenica, etc. And some years ago, or a lot of years ago, when I tried to discover Bosnia in depth, I thought I knew something about Srebrenica. Well, I didn't. And one night, my friend, Serge Jansen, who's also present right now, sent me a photograph, which I found to be not only beautiful, but also startling, so to speak, because it's the photograph of a young boy who just watches into the camera and smiles. And I thought, like, how's this possible? How on earth is this possible, to smile when you're amidst the hell on earth? And that fascinated me. It touched me, of course, very deeply, profoundly. And then Serge said, but this photograph, which turned out to be Esmir's photograph, of course, which we used for the cover, Serge asked, Nick, could you help me find the mother of Esmir, because I want to give her this picture, this photograph, because I think she hasn't got any pictures left. That turned out to be true. So we went on the search for Esmir, not only because we knew by then, of course, Serge already found out that Esmir was brutally killed in 1995, together with his father and so many other family members, but we tried to search for Esmir and his identity, the sort of person he was, because when it comes to the way in which the people of Srebrenica are being portrayed in Holland, in the mainstream media, we never ever see anything about the human side of the story. It's always about statistic and meta-political stories, but never ever about the people of Srebrenica. And when they do talk about it, it's always about the last hour of someone's life. But people are much more than that. Your identity is defined by who you were in the past and in the present, as a child, etc. That's your identity. It's a collection of memories, etc. And when you explain this to your Dutch friends, like, look, the people who did this to the Bosnian people, the architects of the genocide, I will not mention them today because I don't think they deserve it, but those people who did this to you did not only want to physically erase you from the earth, but also culturally, just like the Nazis did during the Second World War with the Jewish people. So in a way, seeing this portrait of life, of resilience, of trying to survive and make something of it during that moment in time, was the beginning of the search of Esmir. And we found a palette of stories and photograph, and even Esmir's voice, because thanks to Serge, who back in 1994 just put on the recording and said, would you say something to Hollandia? And then Esmir spoke, and if he wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't have known who Esmir was by now. We wouldn't have seen him, we wouldn't have known his voice. So that's, in essence, it's the story of the book. And the book is a non-fictional story, of course. I don't have to explain that anymore, but it's a documentary on paper. We will literally show the way in which we searched for Esmir's identity.
And through this search, you mentioned Serge, but also there were other people. You were not alone
No.
in this quest.
Yep, we searched with the people of Srebrenica, so it was so heartwarming. They all helped us. I cannot thank them enough. So it were Bosnians, Bosnian Dutch people, of course. It was just all sorts of people of all creeds and religions, by the way. It was a mix, a blend, and they all helped us to find the mother of Esmir, or anecdotes, or whatever, everything that we could possibly use for this moment of the book, because it's not finished. It's just one humble first effort to try to tell something about who this young man was.
Thank you, Nick. Some of these people are here with us tonight,
Yeah.
and some of them will take place at the stage with us.
Yeah.
But at this moment now, there's something you would like to ask the audience.
Yes, I would like to ask the audience for a short moment of silence together with me. So may I invite you to stand up with me and just to have a short moment of silence for everyone, every victim, and for everybody who perished and who, until this very day, heart is bleeding. Thank you so much. Never forget Srebrenica.
Nemoj žalit suzama, već se sjeti dovama. Nemoj da ti suza krene, kada probudiš uspomene. Nemoj da ti suza krene, kada probudiš uspomene. Nemoj žalit, oče moj, kad ugledaš me, zar moj. Nemoj da ti suza krene, kada se sjetiš, oče mene. Nemoj da ti suza krene, kada se sjetiš, oče mene. Ko da duša poleti, sva u nuru izgori, zastane kraj kapije, Ridvan čuvar avlije. Zastane kraj kapije, Ridvan čuvar avlije.
Thank you, Armin Muzaferija. Tonight we are live in Srebrenica in Amsterdam. We are being accompanied by 50 students from all the Balkan countries who are currently following this program in the Memorial Center in Potočari. As a part of the School of Youth program, which is being organized by the Post-Conflict Research Center and Memorial Center Potočari. We thank them for their presence, and we are also accompanied by Chris Kulemans, a writer and a journalist from Amsterdam, who will be taking an active part in today's book presentation later in the program. Alma Mustafić will be joining us on stage, and we will bring you closer to the value of Alma's story and contribution to the book in a few minutes. And we will also be joined by Asim Mojkić, sociologist and philosopher, professor at the Faculty of Political Sciences. In the first row, we also have Mr. Serge Jansen, who was a UN soldier in Srebrenica in 1994. Serge was and today is a hobby photographer and took hundreds of photos during his 6-month service in Srebrenica. Serge became good friends with Esmir. Nick, could you please tell us about the path of these photos?
These photos which we are now going to see and which are also being added to the book is not only stories but also pictures, are the pictures taken by Serge and his colleagues, because there are a couple of colleagues who also took pictures back then. You would see first of all the picture of Serge when he was young, when he was a Dutch soldier in Srebrenica. Secondly, we will see the pictures of Esmir. This is Esmir chopping wood, helping the Dutch people chopping wood, because the Dutch at that moment weren't able to chop wood, so Esmir helped them, and he was very much used to that one, so I love that story, by the way. Esmir used to play a lot of chess. He was very good at it. He made the pieces himself. He was very good in working with wood. This is Esmir playing with the camera. He just jumps away. This is in front of the weapon collection point where Serge used to surf, and Esmir used to spend his time at the fence, and I don't think I have to mention this one. This is to portray what it's all about, and I think it's a beautiful one. This is the football match which was held, the league in Srebrenica, together with all the people who wanted some relief. You'll see this is one more picture of the weapon collection point, which also plays a very huge role in the story of Serge and Esmir and the way in which they communicated. These are pictures which were taken by Serge in Zeleni, which show the beauty of your country. It's mesmerizing. This is Serge in Zeleni together with some sheep. And this is the collection of friends near the weapon collection point where they used to stand, and you'll see Esmir looking into the camera once more, together with a lot of other people, of course. And this is Osman. Osman you'll see on the right side without the saj. Saj is the Bosnian instrument which is held by his younger brother Hajs. And this once more is Serge. And these are just a couple of photographs which we incorporated in the book, just to show the importance of the photographs, the importance of the memories which are still there and which we collected thanks to Serge and thanks to Osman. And their Facebook page site, in which they try to give these photographs, because these are just a couple of photos which they took and which they put in their own personal archives, and which they are trying to give back to the people. And they have a Facebook site which is doing that for many years. And these photos of Esmir and all the friends are part of that one. So there's very much more to that. So that's the context of the photos, and the way in which they were used, and also the way in which they are incorporated in the book.
Thank you very much, Nick. Just a technical reminder, keep your mic as close as possible to the mouth. And now I have a question for Serge, who obviously is a great contributor to the whole story. Serge, what exactly is the personal meaning of the photos you've taken in 1994 for you?
I want to see back the memories from.
Just like turn on the mic, please. Yeah, I think it's.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
great.
I want to take the pictures for myself as memory, and some of the kids I realized later that they may be being killed, so I can bring back the memory to the parents or some relatives. That's why I did it with Esmir.
Thank you very much, Serge. We know that this mission of bringing back the photos of Esmir to his mother was to help a lot of people in the end actually done. Alma has joined us. Alma has been of great help and support for Nick, not only sharing the intimate memories of her life, but also providing the main pillars of help in finding Esmir. Alma, could you tell us about the path of looking for Esmir?
Well, thank you, first of all, for being here today, and thank you for being here with us. I must say that my mother did the most work. She couldn't come today because it's difficult.
Just keep the mic, excuse me. Just
it's difficult for her to travel to Sarajevo and back, you know. But that was the case, I think. I remember Nick texting me and saying, I found this beautiful picture, and I only know that Esmir is coming from Srebrenica, and we know nothing about him. Could you please help me? I think that was, you said that, but immediately he said, if this is too difficult for you, you know, if you don't want to do it, it's okay, but I had to think about you because you are the first one that came to my mind when we talk about Srebrenica. So if you are willing, would you help us finding Esmir? I didn't even have to think about it. Of course, I said yes, and I knew I need my mother, you know, because I was just a child back then, and she knew all the people, and I immediately said yes, she's going to help us as well, and she did it. So I just texted the picture to my mother, and she did all this great work. I think you described it in the book.
Yes, Alma. We have a chapter for her because it took her more than a month, if I'm correct, to go through all the archives with help of the people of Srebrenica.
And we were talking, you know, in the Netherlands, something like this wouldn't be possible because when you go to City Hall, they are not going to give you anything because of the law, you know, and stuff like that. But in Bosnia, it's the same way. But in Srebrenica, you know, people know each other and they are willing to help. So it took her a bit, but at the end, she did find the mother of Esmir. And then she started crying. She started crying like, I'm my mother myself, and I cannot imagine how is she going to feel when she holds his picture in her hands.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask. How do you reflect on this idea of a life which has been completely erased for 26 years now, and then the opportunity of a mother to feel it in traces? Do you think it in a way provides any kind of you know, like calmness, of remembrance?
Well, I cannot speak for her, of course, but I know when I get a picture, for example, of my dad, of family members that are killed, I'm so happy. It's just like bringing them back, just like they are alive for a second because people think of them, people didn't forget them, they want to share memories, stories about the loved ones. So I can imagine how thrilled and happy she was at the end.
Thank you. Now, Nick, Alma said about how she and her mother played a huge role in this path, and you said that there were a lot of other people. How have you bonded with these people who were basically the heroes of your book?
So many people, Alma and Mama Mehida included, but they, in the end, Esmir brought us together, us all together, and then we found each other, and there were so many people in, which of course became my friends, and back then, I didn't even know that they were there. His nephew, Alaga, for example, there are so many people involved in finding back this story, but yeah, I can already tell that we did went back to the mother of Esmir. We finally found her thanks to Alma and Mama Mehida. We visited her, and also the brother of Esmir, half-brother, Hasudin. And Hasudin did have some recollections about his brother because he used to have, I think he was, I think 7 around that time. But his other brother, half-brother, Izudin, never saw him. So he just sent me a message like, this is the first time I ever see my brother in a picture, yes. So to cut the story short, all the people helped to give back the picture to his mother, yep, in one way or another. Yep.
Thank you, Nick. Now, memories were the basis of looking for Esmir. Memories were and are the basis of what life was like in Srebrenica before life was brutally erased in 1995 in Srebrenica. Here are some of Alma's memories.
Iako djevojčica, voljela sam sve uzbudljive stvari kao dječaci. Ničega se nisam bojala. Sjećam se da sam s ocem često plovila brodom po Drini. S broda bismo odlazili na jedno uzvišenje iznad rijeke, odakle smo dvogledom posmatrali prostor ispod nas. Otac je svakako moj heroj. Bio i ostaće. Pun ljubavi i humora. Imao je zlatne ruke. Pored posla u fabrici radio je i kao privatnik. Nama djeci nije smjelo ništa faliti. Moj otac nas je, i pored toga što je često bio zauzet poslom, ipak nerijetko vodio sa sobom. U tome je bila razlika u odnosu na druge očeve. Ponekad sam bila s njim i kad je radio kod mušterija. Bila bih kraj njega i pomagala mu. Znaš, moj otac je za mene otkrio Holandiju. Jedan njegov prijatelj je godinama prije rata otišao u Holandiju. Otac ga je tamo često posjećivao. Dobro se sjećam kad je prvi put išao na tu stranu. Svi smo se okupili oko kuhinskog stola u našoj velikoj kući. Imala je 4 sprata i ne znam ni sama koliko soba. Cijeli sto je prekrila jedna velika geografska karta. Mati pomaže ocu odrediti rutu putovanja, zapisujući nazive velikih gradova kraj kojih je morao voziti. Na taj način i mi djeca pravimo vlastito putovanje po svijetu. Do tada bila sam još mala djevojčica, nisam ni čula za Holandiju, kad odjednom babo ide u tu nepoznatu i daleku zemlju. Ovu sam priču svima pričala. Kako je moj otac otkrio Holandiju. On je za mene bio nešto kao srebrenički Kolumbo. Da. Kako bih voljela da je upoznao moju djecu.
Bakijama u samoći, čim prođu teške more noći, sama žanješ, snope vežeš, svoje kose plave režeš. Sama žanješ, snoplje vežeš, svoje kose plave režeš. A on u Savi gleda ti lice, prima selame sa moščanice, koji ti čemeran jutrom pjeva i zaželi se Sarajeva. A on u Savi gleda ti lice, prima selame sa moščanice, koji ti čemeran jutrom pjeva i zaželi se Sarajeva. Nečiji prolaze svati, ti ljubav drugom ne želiš dati. Pod srcem o snu nosiš sina, zoveš svoga Hajrudina. Pod srcem o snu nosiš sina, zoveš svoga Hajrudina. lice, prima selame sa Moščanice, koji tiče me rani otrom pjeva i zaželi se Sarajeva. A on u Savi gleda ti lice, prima selame sa Moščanice, koji tiče me rani otrom pjeva i zaželi se Sarajeva. Koji tiče me rani otrom pjeva i zaželi se Sarajeva.
So Alma, we have seen a part of the book where you speak of your memories of your father. Now, being so young at such a traumatic time, there's a part in the book that says, once your TV screen turned black and you could no longer watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, your favorite cartoon, your childhood was taken away from you. Were there times when you were able to escape the fear, the tension, to believe in that idea that it would all end soon and to feel like a child?
I'm still combating tears. But that was terrible. I remember that moment, you know, when we couldn't watch Ninja Turtles anymore. I think 40 plus among us remember Ninja Turtles, and that was the big thing for me back then. And I think on that moment I realized that the war was started. Not when I was first shot at, you know, or when we didn't have any water or electricity or food. That was everything was okay, but when I couldn't watch Ninja Turtles anymore, that was serious business. And then the war starts really, and people are killed like every day, abandoned. We don't have enough to eat. You are just forced to get adult, you know, like in a few days you stop being child, you are adult. Yeah, we couldn't escape it. No, that was not possible. I remember watching birds, you know, flying over Srebrenica and thinking, I wish I could be a bird so I could fly away, because birds were the only species that could go, you know, free. So, no, I don't think so. We did try to play, you know, but the parents were really strict, like, you don't go outside, because if you go outside you could be killed. And still we managed to go outside and to play, because after 2 years sitting inside you just want to go outside and play and be a kid. So we tried to play in the bushes, because we thought Serbs cannot see us there and they are not going to fire at us if we play somewhere, let's say, safe. But, you know, the war, the danger, that was 24/7 available. Like.
Thank you, Alma. Nick, when it comes to Alma and her life and the help she has provided, what has been the strongest impression you've gained about her and her life through this search?
Herself is the first thing that pops up in my mind, because she has become like, sorry Alma, but like a great sister to me. There's this beautiful lady with vigilant and resilient, and who is has a very hard time fighting in Holland, telling the story of Srebrenica, and she's one of the few who's been doing that right now. She's made a beautiful theatrical play about that one. You'll mention it later. Sorry, Hanna. So I'm full of Alma, so to speak. And she took me by the hand and she led me through Srebrenica, because I remember very vividly asking Alma. We had a lot of interviews. Sorry.
Like the whole day we would sit
Just
down
talking.
and talk, and then next day
But the wonderful part of it was that Alma started to talk, and then at a certain point she said, "Nick, am I boring you? Because I'm only telling beautiful memories of my childhood." I said, "No, that's just the beauty of it. Just let it flow."
But I didn't think that somebody would like to hear it, because I never, nobody asked it, before. Like, how was your life before the war?
Really, yeah.
You were the first one. That was why I kept talking and talking about it.
But I was mesmerized by what you painted, because when we started to search for Esmir, thanks to you, I've learned about Srebrenica before the war. I knew nothing whatsoever, nothing about its beauty. And then when we started to talk, and when you start to exchange information with other people, not only academics, but also people who come from Srebrenica, and just like you, wonderful, beautiful childhood memories. And in Holland, we never ever hear something about the way in which Srebrenica used to be. And that's, I think it's back then it was done on purpose, and it's because of the propaganda, and it's being held there in place until this very day. So you were the first one to tell me that, and then we discovered like this beautiful city before the war with a lot of with huge economical growth, with spa resorts, with tourists coming over. And the one that really touched me was you telling what we just saw about your papa. You said my papa was Columbus to me because he discovered Holland. It was quite the opposite. You already knew about Holland when Holland didn't know about you, people of Srebrenica. So you opened my eyes, absolutely. And I thought I knew something about Srebrenica, but I didn't know anything. So I'll keep it to myself, but I was ignorant. And you showed us the beauty of it. And I think that if we keep on showing not only the last moment of people's hours in their lives, but also the beauty of their past, that we can create their that we can reconstruct, reconstruct their individuality. So.
Yes, I think this is very important, to ask people about the life before genocide, because there was a life before genocide, and it was beautiful life. Those are the stories that matters, because then you can identify with people, like, okay, we are the same. And second most important question would be, what were the first signs of genocide, because looking back, I can see them now, but then I couldn't see them. And those are the questions that are important to ask and to learn about, because then we can learn and maybe prevent next genocide in the future. And those questions, you were the first one in the Netherlands that asked me those questions.
Well, I hope we have, no, do not have to hope, we have the same mission, and you already have an antenna. All the people of Srebrenica and the people in Bosnia in general already know what it's like, so they are very much able to already recognize, just like you said, Alma, and we have to learn from that in Holland, because Holland is also gradually deteriorating like that when it comes to the way in which people are treated of all sorts of religions, especially Islam. So it's already there, and we're already like up the 5th step, something like that. So perhaps the 7th or the 8th, and people are not even aware of the fact that it's happening. It's just like the boiled frog, and the people of Bosnia recognize it, and to me you are that symbol, so Holland needs you. It's quite the opposite.
Not only Holland, I would say the whole West, because 30 years ago we knew what nationalism was and where that it can lead to genocide. And now, 30 years later, Europe has the same problem. We, here in the Balkan region, we have other problems now, which are more bigger than nationalism back then in 1992. I think the situation right now is even worse. So those problems are going to Europe in next 20 years, and Europe is just not looking at Balkan like we can learn something from it. I think the Europe and the whole globe should focus on Balkan, because the first thing happens here.
What is how would you describe the importance of using different tools such as literature to constantly remind of the identities people had, of constantly trying to break into the numbers we are being exposed to, and remind the public, the society, that these are individuals with their stories, with their hopes. They had plans for the future, they had friends, they had families, and multiply these identities over 8,000 times. Now, how important it is to like put it out in this way as it is in the book.
I think it's very important. This is just one story.
Yeah.
There are more than 8,000, but I must say Memorial Center in Srebrenica is doing a really great job on this. Last week I was present when they finished the research project, which is a really high-level research project about stories, survivor stories, and it's called Behind the Fields of Killing Fields of Srebrenica. And each, so they filmed 100 people with their story, just like I said, from before the war, during the war, most painful moments, most joyful moments, and the aftermath. And when I saw that, I'm a teacher myself, so I was so excited, like, yes, this is what I need, because we only need one story to get into the people's heart, and then when they want to learn about genocide, want to learn about Srebrenica, magic happens. So I see, like for example, you are doing it on your way with this book. This project is really great. We made this theater play in the Netherlands. So there are lots of projects going on, and I think we should go on until we finished all those stories, because there are more than 8,000 untold stories.
Thank you very much, Alma. I would like to end this part with what you've just said, announcing that from September, a theatrical play, Dangerous Names, will be premiered in the Netherlands, on which Alma is working and acting in, together with a member of the Dutch UN battalion, in order to tell her story of Srebrenica. Thank you for all the amazing work you are doing. And in the next minutes, we will see just what we spoke about. How do you remember Srebrenica before the war?
Prije rata Srebrenica je bila veličanstven grad. Riječi siromaštvo i nezaposlenost naučila sam tek u centru za azilante u Holandiji. U stvari, kad bolje razmislim, pitam se da li je moj život u Holandiji danas suštinski drugačiji od onog koji sam imala u Srebrenici prije 1992. Živjeli smo u tom divnom gradiću u predgrađu Evrope. Radilo se punom parom. Srebrenica je bila puna preduzeća. Betonski blokovi, prerada drveta, fabrika akumulatora, tekstil, prehrambena industrija, rudnici sase sa olovom, cinkom i srebrom. Čak i turizam. Puni autobusi sa turistima iz drugih zemalja dolazili su pred vrata Banje Guber, 2 moderna hotela. Bilo je to naše vlastito privredno čudo. Osim toga, Srebrenica imala i vlastito pozorište i kino. Ljeti bi glavnom ulicom prolazili svečano obučeni šetači. Dolazili bi tu da bi bili viđeni. Ili se sreli s nekim, popričali. Bilo je to mjesto za vidjeti i biti viđen. Vrsta korza, kao što šetaš bulevarom negdje uz obalu mora. Taj život, zajedništvo, to su sjećanja koje nosim na Srebrenicu mladosti moje. Možeš li zamisliti? Logorovanje u šumama i na poljima. Kupanje u Drini s pogledom na Taru. Obale obrasle zelenim rastinjem i visokim drvećem. Mirisi začinskog bilja. Razigrana bezbrižnost. Blaženstvo djetinjstva. Zaklela bih se da takvo nešto nigdje u Europi tada nisi imao.
Now we've seen a part from the book which shows what Alma's memories of Srebrenica before the war were. Thank you very much, Alma. We're now joined by Armin Muzaferija, sociologist and philosopher, professor at the Faculty of Political Sciences, and Chris Kulemans, journalist and writer. Thank you both for joining us. Chris, I would like to begin with asking you, how would you describe the importance of literature, journalism, art, in preserving the memories of genocide victims, but also fighting historical revisionism?
It's a big question, but let me try. I think this book itself is a beautiful example. It takes a society a long time, generations, to come to terms with a crime as unspeakable as a genocide. Much has been written, much has been filmed, much has been recorded about what happened. But if we want to see the real people and the real lives and dig up the real memories like Alma has done, then we need writers like Nick Teunissen, who has the courage and the patience to connect to everyone who was involved, everyone who loved the missing person. And somehow rebuilding, reimagining, and re-energizing that missing person takes a collective effort of the writer, but also of the many people around him. And in that sense, I think this book is an example of exactly what was lost in Srebrenica. What was lost is this sense of community, of togetherness, of liberty and freedom. And through the collective work that Nick has documented in this wonderful book, I think he mirrors the life of Srebrenica before the genocide.
Thank you very much, Chris. Please stay with us. Now, Professor Muzaferija, my question for you is whether there is adequate academic addressing of genocide in our area in the scientific research sense, and how important it is to, with such an approach, keep this dimension we are speaking of, a constant reminder that we are speaking of people, not of numbers.
Yes.
Just very close, please.
I would be unfair to say that there isn't enough of academic effort in this regard. We've just, Alma mentioned, for example, Memorial Center in Srebrenica. There is a very important institute for war crimes in Sarajevo. I have to mention here genocide course in genocide at the master program of the thanks to late Professor Grebo on ERMA program, which is a program on human rights and democracy, and there are a lot of interest in the field. But the question is, the way I see is, it is very hard to, as you put, adequately address the problem of genocide if we have in mind that, unfortunately, genocide is not over. If we take the denial as the phase of recommitting genocide, then, you know, unfortunately, this process is ongoing. In all honesty, it applies to all other similar atrocities. Can we really today, and we mentioned some unfortunate trends in Western and European Union towards revisionism, towards the rise of racism and nationalism, and disputing already established facts about, for example, Holocaust. Can we really honestly say that the issue of Holocaust today is settled?
Or look what happens in Canada these days with the discovery of mass graves of indigenous people. More and more scientists today of academic community, people from academic community, are naming what happened to indigenous people in Americas a genocide for the, or recently Germany recognized a genocide in Namibia. So what does this tell us? I'm a scholar of Hannah Arendt, and she says that we have to accept what she calls unchosen character of earthly living. We get born into this world, and we do not, and we cannot choose with who to live. A project of genocide is when you think you can choose with whom, with what kind of people you will live, and with what kind of people you. This is what happened in Srebrenica, but also this is what happened with the far-right movements in Europe today. We are saying we want to protect our way of life, we don't want to live with these people and things like that. Hannah Arendt openly, and she's a victim, a genocide victim, she openly calls this a prerogative of genocide, which is deeply based into any nationalist program or project. So those are the difficulties. Also, there are methodological difficulties. A lot of scientific approach was indeed in numbers, as Nick rightly criticizes. However, the less scientific and academic approach resembles to maths and physics, and resembles more to literature, for example. And this is a great start with people's stories. Why is this important? It is important because pain is fundamentally non-linguistic. And as long as it is non-linguistic, it is just individual carrying this weight and burden. Once you find a way to articulate it, if you can't, there is a journalist, good journalist, there is a good writer who can do it for you. This is when it gets important. By articulating it, you are somehow objectifying it, and it becomes a social fact to which all other people can, as Alma explained actually just 10 minutes ago, people can share and participate in your pain. And your pain becomes, you can make a distance from it, and it can become a part of your self-consciousness. That's why it is important not only to continue, it is important to continue with research, but also to change methodology more towards true stories, not only of survivors. Nick managed to tell a story of a killed person. With his absence, actually, you managed, maybe thanks to your theatrical and artistic virtues, but you managed somehow to fulfill this emptiness, actually, with new stories, with new friendships, and new artifacts, including tapes and photographs. So I think this is a good way all genocides and war atrocities should be approached.
Thank you very much. I would like Chris to just put a link back to what Alma said previously. Europe is not learning from the experiences in the Balkans. Now, is this, going back again to the question of tools, is literature, is journalism, and then academic research, are these, the question should be, are these tools good in educational purposes for the rest of the society around Bosnia and Herzegovina, and if no, why are they not managing to send the message where it should get? I hope you've heard the question, Chris. we can currently...
Sorry,
yeah,
I
we can hear
didn't,
you.
I didn't know,
Thank you.
I didn't know the question was directed to me.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
Yeah, do you want me to repeat it?
no, it's okay.
Okay.
Of course, the research, the stories, the movies, they do reach people. They do reach new generations. The people with us at the Potocari Memorial Center right now are witness. But we're up against a huge immobile force, as we all know. Last time I was in Srebrenica was in February last year, so just before the pandemic. It was in the winter time, of course. Nothing much was happening, but even so, I was deeply, deeply saddened by the lifeless atmosphere in the city, and as Professor Mujic describes it, maybe the town of Srebrenica itself at the moment was an example of non-linguistic pain. There are very few signs of life. There are very few proof of vitality returning, and all of that is the result, of course, of the permanent blocking of memory, permanent blocking of possibilities to revitalize socially, economically, a place like this. But still, I do believe that the work of the remarkable people coming from this community, spending their time, dedicating their work to the memory, to the research, and to the future of Srebrenica is important and will continue to reach out. It's a crazy thing to me. Like Nick, I didn't know much coming from the Netherlands about life before the genocide in Srebrenica. In the meantime, I know a bit more. And still, I'm so amazed by the percentage, the number of impressive people. Alma herself, Esmir, what would he have become? Maybe an international chess master. Maybe he would have learned photography from Serge and become an international photographer. Who knows? But also people like Emir Suljagic or Hasan Nuhanovic or Hasan Hasanovic or Hayra Čatic, the chair of the women of Srebrenica, Vesna Mustafic, Kiko Malkic, the former mayor. So many impressive people, and I do believe as long as we have them around, as long as we communicate, they will throw stones in the water of the repression of memory, and the circles will widen.
Thank you very much, Chris. I would like to close this section with another question for you, Professor Mujic. We are now speaking of how to send the messages, how to educate the people far away from us. And yet it seems that we should be as well investing a lot of energy in educating the ones who are our neighbors. Genocide denial is something that is just taking over the public space, the political space, and it is something that obviously will be present and will be a problem of our society for some time ahead of us. Now there is, I believe there is not an answer to a question how to educate, how to provide adequate mechanisms for dealing with what members of your nation have done to members of another nation, for those who deny genocide today. But is there perhaps, I always hope when things like this, when somebody writes a book, somebody films a movie, that people who deny genocide happened will at least secretly take a look, read a couple of words, and then start thinking, well, maybe I was not taught right. Am I on a good track with this kind of opinion?
You're completely right. The main important thing is that we should not give up. that's why I said at the beginning, it's hard to deal with genocide, having in mind that this process is unfortunately still ongoing. It still happens with every statement that denies what happened in Srebrenica. Pain continues. The main, and this may give us idea what to do. The way deniers of genocide would like to see is that this pain remains within each individual subject, that it remains forever his or her individual, that means irrelevant pain. Point is that we need to find ways how to make these stories, to facilitate that these stories go out and become what I call a social fact, something that we can point to, refer to, and most importantly, something we can feel empathy and you know, recognize ourselves in such a situation. And that's where education comes. I think films, I think good journalist stories, and on the last place, scientific studies, let me be honest, are our best way how to approach to this. Why is this important when I say to articulate a pain, to objectify it, that means that you overcome, or on a good way to overcome. If you maintain it inside, you know, there is this general that you didn't want to mention, none of these, but he says, while bombarding Sarajevo, he says, bomb Velesići, there aren't too many Serbs living there, stretch their brains out. That was his razvuci im pamet njihovu. And I think the denial of genocide is exactly that, razvlačenje pameti, stretching victims' brains out, meaning to keep this suffering locked within individual, and that he or she is the only one with this, and without any prospect or hope that it will be somehow it will come out and be shared. Books like this, films that that are produced, good stories are the best way for these people to come out and to make this objective.
Professor Mujagic, may I add something to ask you something? I think that it's not only the responsibility of the Bosnian people who have done so much work for the last 33 years, if we include the prelude of the war, the propaganda machine which devastated the country, but there, it's my own humble opinion, but I'm really very much interested about the way in which you look at it, is that the international community also has a very great role when it comes to, you mentioned linguistics and the words of view, the usage of words. As an actor, a writer, I know very much the power of words, that they can kill more people than bullets. And what you see in the western part of Europe is that people are not aware, when we scratch the surface of education, that people are not aware of the semantics of the words they use. So in my opinion, evil has adapted. It's grown much more subtle in that part, in which people who devised this whole story back then, the architects of the Bosnian genocide, are still there, keeping the story alive when it comes to words like civil war, or which it was not, all those kinds of semantics, and people in the western part of Europe don't even know about it. When Alma mentioned to me, like, civil war, Nick, it was not a civil war. We had like a very good conversation about that one, but the majority of the people don't know that, and then it looks like war just suddenly erupted out of this country, whereas I have a very hard time in Holland explaining to my friends, no, the whole ethnic division of Bosnia and Herzegovina as it is today is a result of the war, but not the cause of the war. But it's they still have this idea, and it's not that people don't want to know, but they're ignorant because they're not told. And when they do search for information, it's there in the mainstream media, as you will read it and see it everywhere. So this biased story, and I hope that also our international partners become more aware of the usage of words in policies, etc.
Exactly. Just one sentence. I mean, prior to genocide, the politics of the international community towards people from Srebrenica or people from enclaves, another catchy word, Muslims
Muslim
or
enclave, yep.
the entire politics was dehumanizing in terms of what was protected area. Human life was, what was protected area? Human lives were reduced only to biological, and I rant again, biological nakedness, you feed them, provided that the Republika Srpska authorities allow, but that's a different story. You feed them and maybe to a certain degree cure them. But that's, so before committing genocide, Srebrenica enclave, as well as other so-called enclaves, were dehumanized by the international community politics. They were already half animalized or, reduced to just biological subsistence.
And thanks to my friends of Dutch Bet, may I say so, they just showed me the pictures of a young man who was not dehumanized, thanks to standing to a fence with Serge, and helped me so much years later to finally fathom that aspect of that story. So it's just like you said, thank you so much for not giving up, because I think you see it's everywhere, and if you want to, you can emotionally relate to the story, but thanks to the wonderful academic work already done in Bosnia, we can finally build upon that one by telling stories, which is, I think, our moral obligation as artists. Should be.
And civilizational obligation in general.
Thank you very much, Professor Mojkić. Thank you, Chris, for joining us in this part of the book presentation. Tomorrow, the remains of 19 genocide victims will be buried in Potočari, including 2 minors, a father and a son, and a woman. We emphasize this information because they have been illustrating for 26 years that everyone who got in the way of war criminals were killed in Srebrenica. And getting in the way meant being alive and having the names they had. Nick, what do you want people who are watching us, people abroad, to understand about 11th of July?
That this was the most horrendous crime ever since the end of the Second World War, which was committed against people who are just like you and me, and it sounds very trivial, but it's so not trivial, because, well, Professor Mojkić, Chris already explained, it's there, and we should fight against it, and they're just humans, just like you and me, and there is someone put a wall. Did it on purpose, put a wall between people on the western part of Europe, people on the eastern part of Europe, in order to commit these crimes. And it's time we tear down that wall of propaganda and nationalism, extreme nationalism, together with the international partners. They should help, because you cannot ask people in Bosnia and Herzegovina who have been traumatized for the last 30 years, who are very resilient people building their lives now. Also, it's almost inhumane to ask of them also to fight this alone. You should not get a prize for the Nobel Prize of Literature when you say certain things without mentioning names. But it's wrong. It's quite disgusting, and we should end that. And people should be aware of the fact, the weight of words, just like Professor Mojkić beautifully explained, the linguistics of the whole story. We should be aware of that. And then we can fight this linguistic evil. That's it.
A part of the words in your book are about another dear friend and contributor who is today here with us, Osman, sitting in the first row. Thank you for being here with us today. Nick, tell us the story of Osman.
Osman used to be a friend of Esmir as well, and they used to stand, not only the two of them, there was this whole group, which was just shown on the pictures when we began the program, and Osman used to, be friends with Esmir, stand at the fence, spending time, because sometimes it would be boring as well, so they want to have like good contact with this Dutch soldier, which used to be Serge, but a couple of others as well. And Osman also shared with me his heart and his stories, telling me the story of how he used to live in Srebrenica during the war. He told me a lot of anecdotes about Esmir, also beautifully humorous stories about the way in which they would get water from the well. I will not elaborate on that one, but it also showed like two young guys making the best of it. So I feel very blessed, like that all these people, including Osman, opened their heart to me in all. They opened their heart and their stories to me. Even though they have much pain.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Osman. We will now watch a video, another video. This one displays an attempt to escape from death.
Puca se sa svih strana. Neki ljudi nam javljaju da su srpski vojnici već stavili svoju zastavu na pekaru u centru grada. Pa to je ovdje iza ćoška. Nećemo valjda dozvoliti da nas uhvate u klopu. Mnogi idu u pravcu plavih šljemova. Stoji među stotinama drugih. Mladi, stari, očevi i dede. Žene i djecu autobusima izvoze iz grada. Možda će tako biti spašen. A mi, kroz šume i preko brda. Sami ili u koloni. A Esmir, kad sam ga posljednji put vidio? Esmir.
Prijatelju moj, druže najbolji, ostavi me kada mnogo trebao si mi ko nikada. U najgore dane ja liječim rane koje mi nikad neće ni zamladiti, jaro moj. U tom novom svijetu nađi mjesto za mene, jer ja ovdje neću moći dugo bez tebe. Kajlo stara, jaro moj, Kajlo stara, jaro ono staro dobro vrijeme nikad neće biti, a ni našu staru raju opet sastaviti, jer nema njih. U mom srcu znaj, zauvijek ćeš biti, a ja Drinskom cestom neću više prolaziti, a razlog znam. U tom novom svijetu nađi mjesto za mene, jer ja ovdje neću moći dugo bez tebe. Kajlo stara, Jaromo, Kajlo stara, Jaromo.
Thank you. And once again, thank you, Osman, for being here with us today. I can only imagine the amount of strength it takes to be here and participate. Now, Nick, it is very important for us to understand the perception of youth here and abroad when it comes to the problems of genocide denial, when it comes to the idea of preserving memories. And what is it that you believe that your book might speak about to the younger generations, to those abroad and those here, to those who, unfortunately, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, perhaps did not have enough formal education when it comes to the genocide in Srebrenica, when it comes to the idea of preserving memories? What does the book communicate toward them?
Well, a long time ago I learned that empathy is something you can train, which is like a muscle. And in the book I, without putting myself on the forefront, but I relate to the stories of Alma and Alaga and Osman and Esmir, to all of them, because of being a child, because I was born in 1982, so I was 13 when Srebrenica fell. And when I watched the evening news, I couldn't relate to the story. I saw the pictures and I thought, I feel things, but I do not understand things, and I couldn't even put them into words. But it's okay, and I wanted to say to the young generation that it is possible to dig into the subject, even though you don't know anything about it. I was as ignorant as everybody in Holland, not everybody, but the majority of Dutch people. But it's just dig, just search, and put your parents beside you, and it is possible to find your way through the material. And I think that, especially when it comes to what Alma's doing now with theatrical plays, with not only, just like Professor Mujic expressed, not only by academical research, which is the base, the necessity on which we have to build our educational system, because those are the facts, and now we have to put that back into not only 3D but 4D in order for young people to emotionally relate to it, because you're only possible it enables, when you make an emotional connection with that story, then you will be able to find the secret to understanding what happened back there. It's not that difficult. It seems difficult, but it's not. It's just open your heart. Don't open your heart to evil, but open it to love. And people are there to, also for the Dutch people, just they're there. So just be interested. That's it.
And young people have a big role and a big responsibility when it comes to building peace as well. At the beginning of our program, we saw a group of around 50 young people in the Memorial Center in Srebrenica who are undergoing an educational program which is the true tool of building peace, because it does not involve putting things which happened under the carpet and not speaking of them in order to like each other. It means understanding what happened, fighting and overcoming trauma, and especially transgenerational trauma in the context of our area, of our space here. What is it that do you think that sometimes young people here in Bosnia say, but we do not want this role. We were given, we did not ask for this role. However, we do have to accept this role and work on building peace. How should young people, how should they overcome the oftenly politically and socially based boundaries which are put beneath, beneath them? They are often not able to connect, to speak, to be able to exchange opinions. How can young people in Bosnia and Herzegovina build peace, which we do need?
beautiful question. By once more, by also having the support of the international community, which of course there already is, because there's so many lovely projects trying to help, not help, because that sounds like paternalistic, but just in order to facilitate, let it be like that, for young people to choose their way. I know so many bright young people who are even attending the show today, who work very hard to not only build a beautiful life in Bosnia, not only abroad, because of the brain drain, but also here. So I think it's, and they are already doing that, like, which is happening with the Srebrenica Youth School program by the Post-Conflict Research Center, wonderful work. All those young people who are now watching put together and discussing the subjects and listening to people, that's the key to it. And to be honest to yourself, as me speaking about my own self, like just don't be ashamed to say, I'm speaking for myself by the way, but don't be ashamed to say, like, I didn't know anything, or perhaps I was a little bit far right, but now because I met you, Hannah, it's hypothetically speaking,
Yeah, of course.
but now that I meet you, for example, I tend to well, get a totally different picture of the story. It's okay, and you can let it be. And when you when you put those stories out and start trying to connect, then you can touch the heart of a lot of young people who will also think, okay, that's what my parents said, but that's not me. Ciao, I will have my own story about this one. And it's very brave, by the way, because they are fighting against communities in which they are being raised, in which their parents have a certain opinion because they spent the war doing certain things. So it's very difficult to break out, but once you do, and they are here, then we should cherish them and enable them to tell their stories.
Thank you.
That's an answer to your question.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Nick. An important information we need to give is that the book Looking for Esmir is available in 3 languages, Bosnian, English, and Dutch. You may order it at www.nickteunissen.com. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. And we have just spoke about the importance of education. We have basically been speaking of it all night, and education builds Bosnia and Herzegovina. Indeed, it does. And that is why, Nick, I would like you now to share the information on how do you plan to dispose your royalties from the book?
Exactly. All the royalties of the book, of all the languages, go directly to the foundation of the late General Jovan Divjak, of which I'm a great admirer for many years, and who I had the privilege to meet once, 2 years ago, and we had a wonderful time in Vijećnica during an official program, and afterwards I expressed my feelings for him, and he laughed like, Nick, come on, Nema. And we talked for so long, and then he said, like, come to my foundation, I will show you what I'm doing. Just like you said, Hannah, his foundation is completely focused on giving grants to youngsters in order to, to have an education here or abroad. And I thought, wow, we have to do something with it in due time. And then the book was written, and it was always a wish of me to donate all the royalties, so we don't earn any penny of it, to Jovan Divjak's foundation. Then he sadly died, of course, but we managed to arrange this with people who represent his foundation right now, of which we are very proud. So we hope that everybody, everywhere around the world, will buy the book, so that we can support a lot of young people to, make a humble effort in order to contribute to young people getting a good education.
Thank you, Nick. It is indeed, I believe, the right and a great step to be done, because the work of late General Jovan Divjak is something that should be a path in this way that we have been speaking of in the future, the society we want it to be like. We would like to thank everyone who contributed to the program tonight. A special thank you to Armin Muzaferija and pianist Din Hodžić for impressive contribution. My name is Hana Sokolović, and I invite you all to read the book Looking for Esmir. It is a book that speaks of searching, finding, that speaks of introducing, getting to know people who would not be able to present to you themselves in any different way. It is a book of living, of dying, of remembering, and never forgetting. We are saying goodbye from Bosnia with a song, Peace Resides with You. Thank you.
Bude mrak, tvoje oči sklope se, tvoja duša potone, pa dođe dan, a ti ležiš umoran, tebi svijet je sumoran, onda poželiš da se probudiš i pronađeš svoj mir među živima. Sve si prošao, sud si gledao, našao ga tu u svojim grudima i sad si ja, poput sunca je novo jutro, novi dan, ti se budiš bezbrižan jer ti prija, jer te raduje što si shvatio, mir u tebi stanuje. Bude mrak, tvoje oči sklope se, tvoja duša potone, pa dođe dan, a ti ležiš umoran, tebi svijet je sumoran, onda poželiš da se probudiš i pronađeš svoj mir među živima. Sve si prošao, sud si gledao, našao ga tu u svojim grudima i sad si ja, poput sunca je novo jutro, novi dan, ti se budiš bezbrižan jer ti prija, jer te raduje što si shvatio, mir u tebi stanuje. I sad si ja, poput sunca je novo jutro, novi dan, ti se budiš bezbrižan jer ti prija, jer te raduje što si shvatio, mir u tebi stanuje.